Margaret's hand trembled imperceptibly as she reached for the ceramic mug on her desk. To anyone watching, it contained nothing more suspicious than black coffee, the fuel of corporate America. But the bitter liquid had been carefully doctored with vodka from the flask hidden in her locked bottom drawer, nestled between hanging files labeled quarterly reports and tax documents. She'd perfected the ratio over 3 years, just enough to steady her nerves, never enough to slur her words. The mints she compulsively consumed masked any telltale scent. Eye drops eliminated the redness. Her makeup routine now included extra concealer for the broken capillaries, spreading across her cheeks like tiny rivers on a map. The morning ritual was precise. Arrive at 7:30, before most colleagues, pour coffee in the break room, making small talk with whoever was there, establishing an alibi of normalcy. Return to her office, lock the door for an important call, and perform the delicate alchemy that would carry her through until lunch. As senior financial analyst at Brennan & Associates, Margaret commanded respect. Her spreadsheets were immaculate, her presentations flawless. She never missed deadlines, never called in sick on Mondays, never stumbled over her words in meetings. She was, by all observable metrics, exemplary. But metrics couldn't measure the crushing weight that pressed against her chest each morning, the gray fog that had settled over her life after David left, taking Emma with him. The custody evaluator had been thorough, noting the wine bottles in recycling, the empty refrigerator. The vodka helped. It transformed the unbearable weight into something merely heavy. It softened the sharp edges of memory, blurred the image of Emma's confused face as David packed her things. By noon, the morning's dose would wear thin. The bathroom trips became more frequent, not for the obvious reason, but to drink deeply from the travel mug she'd started carrying everywhere. Green tea. She'd say if anyone asked. My acupuncturist recommended it for stress. Her assistant, Janet, had started watching her with an expression Margaret couldn't quite read. Last week, Janet had knocked during one of Margaret's calls, waiting uncomfortably long before leaving. Yesterday, she'd suggested they have lunch together, an unprecedented invitation Margaret declined with elaborate excuses about dietary restrictions. The afternoon stretched like pulled taffy. In the conference room presenting quarterly projections to the board, Margaret felt sweat pooling at the base of her spine despite the aggressive air conditioning. Her mouth was cotton dry, but she couldn't drink from her mug here, not with 12 pairs of eyes tracking her every movement. She clicked through slides, hearing her voice as if from a distance. The numbers blurred momentarily, swimming like fish in an aquarium. She blinked hard, gripped the clicker tighter. Are you all right, Margaret? Richard Brennan's voice cut through her concentration. Perfect, just a slight headache. These fluorescent lights. She smiled, the expression feeling painted on. The meeting concluded without incident, but as colleagues filed out, she caught whispered fragments. Seems off lately. Divorce really did a number. Smelled something strange. Back in her office, door locked, she pulled the flask out with shaking hands. Just enough to get through the last 2 hours. Just enough to drive home safely. Just enough to face the empty house where Emma's room stood like a shrine to her failures as a mother. But the flask was lighter than it should be. She'd miscalculated. Had Janet been in her office? The cleaning crew? She tipped it back, draining the last drops, panic rising in her throat. Her computer screen swam. The numbers she'd been entering were wrong, all wrong. How long had she been inputting garbage data? She tried to undo, but her fingers fumbled on the keys. The screen flashed an error message she couldn't quite read. A knock at the door, Richard Brennan's voice. Margaret, we need to talk. She stood too quickly, knocking the empty flask from her desk. It rolled across the floor with a metallic whisper, stopping at Richard's feet as he entered with HR Director Paula Williams and a man she didn't recognize. This is Dr. James Hartley, Paula said softly. He specializes in employee assistance programs. Margaret's carefully constructed world collapsed like a house of cards. They knew. Of course they knew. The security footage Paula pulled up on her laptop showed everything. The morning ritual, The bathroom trips? Last Tuesday, when she'd stumbled in the parking garage and sat in her car for an hour before attempting to drive. Your work has been deteriorating for months, Richard said, not unkindly. Janet came to us after finding you passed out at your desk last Thursday. You don't remember, do you? She didn't. Thursday was a black hole, like so many recent days. We value you, Margaret, Paula continued. Your contributions to this company have been significant, but the errors in the Morrison account alone could have cost us millions if Janet hadn't caught them. Dr. Hartley stepped forward. There's a program, 30 days residential, then outpatient support. Your insurance covers it. Your job will be waiting. Margaret looked at the flask on the floor, its mouth open like it was gasping for air. She thought of Emma, of the last supervised visit where her daughter had wrinkled her nose and asked why Mommy smelled funny. She thought of David's pitying looks, of Janet's worried face, of all the mornings she'd promised herself she'd stop tomorrow. What if I refuse? Her voice was hollow. Richard's expression hardened. Then we'll have your desk cleared within the hour. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of everything she'd lost and might still lose. Outside, life continued, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the ordinary machinery of a Thursday afternoon. Inside this office, time had stopped, waiting for her answer. It was the heaviest thing she'd ever lifted, and the most necessary. When do I leave? Now, Dr. Hartley said gently. My car is outside. As she gathered her purse, leaving behind the carefully organized desk that had been her fortress, Margaret caught her reflection in the window. The woman staring back was a stranger, hollow-eyed, gaunt, defeated. But for the first time in 3 years, she was visible. The mask had finally cracked, and perhaps in that breaking, there was the possibility of becoming whole. The drive to Serenity Springs took 2 hours, though Margaret remembered none of it. Hartley had given her something for the withdrawals that were already beginning, her hands shaking violently, sweat soaking through her blouse despite the October chill. She drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally surfacing to see trees blurring past, their leaves the color of old blood. At intake, a nurse with kind eyes searched her luggage, with practiced efficiency, confiscating mouthwash, hand sanitizer. The vanilla extract she'd hidden in her makeup bag, a last-minute grab from her desk drawer. Margaret watched her desperation laid bare in travel-sized bottles. Phone, the nurse said, hand extended. Margaret clutched it. I need to call my daughter. After detox, typically 3 to 5 days. The room spun, 3 to 5 days before she could explain to Emma why Mommy had disappeared. Would David even answer? Would he tell Emma the truth, or craft another lie to protect her? That first night was hell distilled to its purest form. Every nerve in her body screamed. Shadows crawled across the ceiling like living things. She vomited until there was nothing left, then dry heaved until her ribs ached. A different nurse checked on her hourly, taking vitals, offering water she couldn't keep down. By day 3, she could stand without the floor tilting. Her roommate, a kindergarten teacher named Beth who'd hidden wine bottles in her classroom supply closet, watched her with recognition. It gets easier, Beth said. Not easy. Easier. Group therapy was a circle of ruin. A pilot who'd flown passengers while drunk, a surgeon who'd operated after morning shots, a mother who'd forgotten her infant in a hot car, saved only by a neighbor's intervention. Margaret Story, financial analyst, who'd hidden vodka in coffee, seemed almost quaint by comparison. Addiction doesn't discriminate, the counselor said. It takes whoever it can. On day 7, she was allowed her phone call. David answered on the 5th ring. Maggie? He hadn't called her that in years. Richard Brennan called me. Are you okay? I'm in treatment. The words felt foreign. 30 days. Tell Emma I'm sick but getting better. Please. Silence stretched between them. She made you a card. Yesterday. Out of nowhere. Like she knew. Margaret's throat closed. David, Get better, Maggie. Really better. Then we'll talk about visits. The line went dead, but in his voice, she'd heard something she hadn't expected. Not forgiveness, Not yet, but the possibility of it. A door not closed, but cracked. That night, for the first time in 3 years, Margaret went to sleep sober, holding onto that crack of light like a lifeline in the dark. 6 months later. Margaret's fingers didn't shake as she entered the familiar building at Brennan & Associates. The security guard Thomas did a double take before his face broke into a genuine smile. "Welcome back, Miss Chen." Her office had been reassigned. She'd expected that. The new space was smaller, tucked into a corner of the 3rd floor instead of the 5th floor suite she'd once commanded. Junior analyst, not senior. Starting over at 43. Janet appeared in the doorway, carrying a small potted succulent. "Thought you could use something living in here. They're hard to kill." She paused. "I'm glad you're back." Margaret accepted the plant, noting how Janet's eyes quickly scanned her face, checking for signs, for slippage. She'd be doing that for a while. They all would. "Thank you for everything. Especially—" "We don't need to," Janet said quickly. I'm glad you're back." The work was simpler now, basic accounts, nothing requiring the security clearance she'd lost. Richard had been clear. 1 chance, regular drug and alcohol testing, mandatory weekly sessions with Dr. Hartley. Any deviation, any positive test, and she was gone forever. At lunch, she sat alone in the break room, watching colleagues navigate around her like water around a stone. The coffee maker beckoned, but she heated water for herbal tea instead. Coffee was too tied to memory, to ritual, to the taste of vodka burning beneath the bitter. Her phone buzzed. A photo from David, Emma, at soccer practice, grass-stained and grinning. Below it, a text. "She wants to know if you're coming to Saturday's game." Margaret stared at the message for a full minute before typing, "If you're comfortable with that." Supervised. "My mother will be there too." I understand. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was progress. The custody agreement remained unchanged. David had full custody. Margaret had supervised visits at his discretion. But the visits were happening now. Awkward Saturday afternoons in public places where Emma slowly stopped flinching when Margaret hugged her. At 5 p.m., Margaret packed her bag and drove to the community center on Maple Street. The AA meeting was in the basement, fluorescent lights humming over a circle of mismatched chairs. A lawyer named James, a college student who looked impossibly young. "Hi, I'm Margaret, and I'm an alcoholic." "Hi, Margaret. Today is my 182nd day sober." Applause, genuine and warm. 6 months was something, not everything, but something. After the meeting, she drove to her new apartment, smaller than the house, but manageable on her reduced salary. The walls held 2 photos, one of Emma from before, one from last Saturday at the park. In the second photo, they were both laughing at something off camera, Margaret's hand on her daughter's shoulder. Natural, unforced, real. Her phone rang. Richard Brennan. "Margaret, I wanted to discuss something. The Morrison account, we're bringing it back in-house. It needs someone detail-oriented, someone who understands its complexity. The pay increase wouldn't be substantial, but it's a step. If you're interested." She closed her eyes. "Richard? Why?" "Because everyone deserves a second chance. And because in 3 years of drinking, you still caught errors others missed. Imagine what you can do sober." After the call, Margaret stood at her window, watching the city lights flicker like stars. Tomorrow would be day 183, then 184, then 185. Each day a choice, each choice a small victory. She thought of the woman who'd hidden vodka in coffee cups, who'd built elaborate lies to protect a crumbling facade. That woman felt like a ghost, now familiar but distant, a cautionary tale she carried with her. The flask still existed, somewhere in Dr. Hartley's office, a prop in the story of her unraveling. But the story hadn't ended there. It had broken in the middle, cracked open like an egg, and from that breaking, something else had emerged. Not healed, not cured, but sober, visible, trying. It was enough. For today, it was enough.